Welcome to my man cave.
I called my thing a man cave.
No, I call it. What do you call it? You don't call it the den?
I called it the boy hole.
You guys want to come into my boy hole? Not particularly, dumb. Oh god.
Like it's like that's one of two ways to take it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's either that or the person going like, when you told me you wanted me to come into your boy hole, I'm not gonna lie, I was expecting something different.
Oh no.
Hey everybody, here we are. Welcome to.
This is just the warm up talk. This is our warm up chat.
I just want to see
I use it, sometimes I don't.
how close I could sound to you.
Hey!
Welcome to Reasonable Beef.
Yeah, that is how
Just
I
the
do it. Don't do that again. That's my thing. Okay. So more importantly, let's talk about life, pursuit of happiness. How's everyone's life doing? What's
You know the answer.
What's it? Okay, so you just
Terrible.
finished working on your script, first draft of the script.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Waiting for feedback
Okay.
from both Tims.
Yeah. I have not given feedback. Tim has a fresh meeting on election day. I don't know if we can talk about that, so we're going to NDA that for a second. But it's a hot meeting.
They're letting him decide who's president.
Yeah, it's no one knows, but it's basically just me in a room, and like
I tear up all your ballots.
Yep.
And I laugh that you believe that democracy is real.
What does she smell like? What does he smell like?
I wonder, dude. What does he smell like? You know what pisses me off? I hate when Hillary Clinton does shit. Like, so at her rally tonight, she had Beyonce and Jay-Z show up. And I'm seeing people tweet, like, the election's over, Hillary won. And it's like, now, hang on a second. Everybody who likes those people, they're already on board.
It's over.
You know what I mean? It's the same thing like, oh, let's get Lena Dunham. Let's get Hamilton the musical. It's like, dude, that's not going to bring the American working class back into the fray.
Garth Brooks
We are
at the Hillary concert?
We already have fat girls with Gryffindor scarves. We already have that fucking demographic. Let's move on to something else. That's my political rant.
Welcome to Reasonable Beef.
Reasonable Beef! Welcome to Reasonable Beef, everybody. I am Tim E. Kish, your host. I'm here with my co-host. What's his name?
Hey, Beef Child.
It's Beef Child McManus.
I'm
the
dumb.
two-armed terror. And who else is here? It's our old friend.
Other Tim
H. You may remember him from the Talking About days, which were like 6 months ago. It was good times.
back when Vine was a thing.
Topical. So we saw Dr. Goddamn Motherfucking Strange.
Yes.
Yay!
Hey.
The latest. In the
We all
Marvel.
sound like we're not upset. That sounded like we weren't happy.
Stranger Things.
Doctor Strange. Oh, dude. How
Doctor
long?
Stranger
How
Things.
long
it's-
until the T-shirt? I'm waiting for it.
Dude, I get those T Fury emails every morning, and they show me like the tea of the day.
Yeah.
And it's always like, Stranger Things, but Snoopy.
Yeah. Dr. Steven Universe Strange.
I'm sure that
Strange
exists.
Yeah.
You'll do some kind of
Ride in the Eye of Agamotto or something like that.
Agamotto.
Dude, nerds, you guys are fucking saps. You are suckers, and they will sell you anything.
No.
Where do you get your money? Like, where do these people get their money to buy, like, their fucking...
How do you fund your life and roll? God damn it. Your rock and roll lifestyle.
Yes.
I said your life and roll rock style. How do you fund your
That is bad.
life and roll rock style?
It's frustrating to me to see
Well,
that.
here's what I think is also it's confusing because now it's not the nerd quote unquote core audience is not the core audience anymore. Now it's everybody again. So now all of these things are able to be marketed how every other stupid bullshit fad thing
That's
was.
true.
Yeah.
We're just like, we're putting him with, but it's his face.
It's funny. I had a moment. I was wearing a. I'm sure I've worn it here at some point. It's a. Straight,
is it that shirt that you have that says
straight out of Tatooine?
I thought it was the I'm a big stupid asshole.
That's shirt. Yeah.
Literally no one likes me.
Yeah.
I love that one.
What was funny was like, so I was wearing a Star Wars shirt, but it's a play on Straight Outta Compton, right?
Right.
And it was the first time ever that I was sort of hanging out with a bunch of people who I didn't know, and like. I only knew sort of one connection. I only had one connection in the group. And one person was like, "Hey, what's your shirt?" And I sort of, for the first time ever, was like, "Oh, it's like Tatooine, like in Star Wars." Have you guys seen Star Wars? And I for the first time ever felt back like I was back in the 90s, where like, oh, I'm a nerd for liking this. Yeah. Because that's the weird thing with Star Wars now is it's like, it's not nerdy to like Star Wars. Everybody fucking likes Star Wars. So it was strange to be in a circle where for the first time ever I was like, oh no, you guys don't like what
it still
you know what I mean?
exists.
Look, it's okay to be a nerd to a certain extent. I feel like people love mediocrity, and you're only allowed to have like a quarter of a knowledge of something that you're talking about. You know, you're not allowed to know the name of the planets in Star Wars.
Right.
You know, you could know the characters and maybe fuck up one of their names or two.
Totally.
I do that constantly.
Yeah,
like when I'm around strangers, I will be like, it's like Jabba the Hoot. You know what I mean?
Jabba the Hoot.
And
like,
people
oh yeah, I like it when they smash the laser swords into each other. That's cool.
Yes, laser swords. Yes, I make shit up all the time so that nobody thinks that I'm
and instead
like
of R2D2, like the shit can.
yeah, the shit robot.
Yeah,
lord.
I love when you do that. That's so much fun.
At a certain, but you just say things that people have no clue what you're referring to.
Well, that's about when you catch someone when you
like,
say
yeah, Star
bullshit,
Wars.
some bullshit planet, like, oh, when they were off on Wakatoon.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, right, and because you remember it was from the novel. I'm like, yes,
See,
of course.
but here's the difference. There's a certain group of people that'll be like, "Ha! I nailed you. Wakatoon's not a real planet." It's
Right,
like,
it's like-
dude, they're only saying that because they don't want to talk to you anymore. They just want you to stop talking about this and move on to the next thing.
The conversation explaining what Wakatoon is and its environmental hazards would go on for too long.
It doesn't need to occur. Yes. So, fuck Doctor Strange.
Wakatoon. Let's do it, baby.
We saw Wakatoon, and the mountains were beautiful. So Doctor Strange was chapter 3?
No, it's like 14.
Of phase 3, right? Chapter
I
3,
guess
phase
why
3?
would I have... that was stupid of me to assume that you thought it was the third Marvel movie ever.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Why?
It's not even the third one of them all together.
So like Ant-Man closed out phase 2.
Right.
Which is weird, right? Because that was after Ultron.
Yeah, so this is the second installment in phase 3.
Sure.
No.
Civil War
Is it?
would be
Yes.
the first one. Right?
Yes.
Oh, weird.
He's correct.
That's very weird.
He's correct. So this is chapter 2, phase 3.
Yeah. I think it would be cleaner if they were to say that Avengers movies were the equivalent of a finale of each phase.
Yes,
Right,
this
it's
is the season
confusing.
finale.
So Ant-Man confuses it.
Look, here's what we need to do. Captain America is the season premiere, and we need to do Avengers as the season finisher.
Right.
Every time. It's just the best way to do it.
What was
I
weird-
hate that there's a best way to do this now. You know what I mean? Like the patterns are emerging.
So now, but
of
we still
episodic
have
filmmaking.
before Infinity War though. We still have now
Black
Thor,
Panther,
Black Panther, Spidey.
Spider, yes.
Is there one I'm
2018.
Guardians.
Yeah, Godagog.
Yeah.
Go Taj.
Yeah, and Captain Marvel's coming out between the
yeah.
two Avengers movies.
And
God.
Captain Marvel.
Oh, Captain Marvel's happening between Infinity.
Although they're no longer part 1 and 2 now, right? That's been changed
Right.
recently.
Hey, you know what? She's the only one who hasn't been introduced yet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Although I
Yeah.
have heard rumors about she might show up in like a Guardians type.
I'm sure she will. In Guardians of the Galaxy.
Now that she's been cast, right?
Yeah, and that definitely Adam Warlock shit, I think, because he's going to be the main villain there.
So we're gonna talk. I mean, we'll get into our thoughts about the movie, but who gives a fuck?
Yes, obviously spoilers, but you know, as you know, listening to this, anytime we talk about Marvel movies, we have to talk, or Marvel anything, we talk about the big picture here, and,
Right.
and like a kind of overarching. And I think that the key takeaway, as we were discussing for Doctor Strange, is that this is the new Tony Stark,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
this
yeah.
is the guy.
Yeah, and spoilers, piece of paper blew into my face on Hollywood Boulevard, and it said, the Avengers ending, last page, and Tony Stark dies, and also Captain America and Thor, and they're all gonna die.
What is this like a reference to something?
No, this happened.
Wait, really? No. So you're lying.
Yeah.
This isn't.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I was doing.
Yes, I'm lying.
You could call it that.
Okay, if you really wanted
a joke that doesn't hit is just a lie. Think about it.
God damn it. But yes, he is new Tony Stark, which is weird.
But the thing I don't mind if someone's taking Tony Stark's place. I find it a little upsetting that he is like another Tony Stark.
You've got similar facial hair.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like they're just replacing it. It's like when they replaced Marty McFly's girlfriend in the second movie, which is just like, oh, she's got the same hair. It's the same person.
Same hair.
Completely different.
But
I don't. That was 4 years later.
But
and this is getting fair.
And so I guess why don't we jump into it? What I was gonna start asking about was like, so wait, is it confirmed? Is Doctor Strange now like for sure in the next Thor movie? Is that what that is now?
Sort of.
Or just like in the beginning of it?
Probably.
Like,
yeah. He's probably, gonna do some divining shit and be like, oh, he's on this planet in this universe, whatever. Thor goes to that planet. Oh shit, here's where the Hulk is, and then they team up and do things.
Oh, how'd you? Because I just know that that ship that you were on, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So I was just wondering how that. What
like we haven't been to Mars yet. So what are you doing in Attune?
Hulk not know.
Mountain's beautiful though. So visually, movie is a fucking insane goddamn roller coaster, and I loved it visually. We saw it in full disclosure 3D IMAX.
Yes.
See it like that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Right? See it like
I agree. No, and I don't know. It's funny. I think the ingenuity in like the visuals and the action set pieces do deserve like their whole own separate little section of praise.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, absolutely.
Just as like, because it's funny because like even just for like, oh wow, you did the big summer blockbuster action sequences, but you did them differently.
Yeah.
You did something interesting that
Totally.
I genuinely haven't seen in something. And it's funny because a lot of people make the Inception comparison, to which I go, I can see that. I could imagine that he would have seen the director would have seen Inception and seen the like. The folding on each other, and then gone, all right, how do we do that on steroids? Which to me is still creative. Like you're still taking that same idea and going, all right, cool. What's that?
Let's do more.
Yeah. So and like, but it's funny because I would, so some of that stuff was very creative, but the one I can't get out of my head is the reversing the everything
Absolutely.
reversing time with a fight scene happening in normal time. Fascinating. Like it was just
Right.
like that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, but it's funny. Like that bugs me when people draw the comparison to like the Inception thing, because it's not even arguably the most fun to even look at part.
Yeah, but
that's just like the.
But that's so iconically the Inception.
No,
Like,
I know,
you what mean?
but it's more being like, oh, they just ripped. First of all,
Yeah,
they didn't just rip it, because what they did is very different.
Absolutely, but there's the thing about visual evocation.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, this is supposed
Well,
to
of course
make
it would
think of
remind
this
you.
thing.
I mean, it's one of those examples though where like as a filmmaker, I always am inclined to defend that simply on account of like, and it's funny because people do it all the time, and people do it especially when they're not a fan of something. They like to sort of go like, oh, Star Wars was just the serials that George Lucas grew up on, or Indiana Jones was just this thing, or like people basically like to rip apart what George Lucas does. No, but in general, I think people like to sort of say like, they had like influences, to which I go like, yeah, everyone fucking had influences. I find it a little bit of an exhausting like sort of argument, because I'm just like, I don't know, like it requires creativity to then take something.
Yeah, but like,
and
couldn't
then-
we have done something else? You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was cool. It was breathtaking, and they clearly did other shit.
Well, that's what I was
like,
gonna say.
a
That's
lot
not
of
even
other
the
shit.
Inception
Exactly.
parts weren't even the coolest looking parts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but at that point, it makes you say like, so why did we? But I don't know. I think just the way they did it was so Inception-y. But it didn't bother me,
See,
because Doctor Strange falls into his own eyeball at a point in this movie, and it's amazing.
It's true. It was amazing. It was yanking giggles out of me.
Yeah.
Like I was watching something, and then just by true delight, visual delight, I would
Sure.
go, no.
But I also think that was the point. There's a lot of
Oh,
people
yeah.
laughing. I'm like, Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
it's
what am
supposed
I
to be like,
looking
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. No, it was appropriately like psychedelic and sort of mind bending. Like,
And it's funny because I was trying to. There's a part of you where you can break it down just to like get it off of the pedestal of like godlike visual filmmaking, being like, okay, so they did these crazy things, but really when you're looking at how the people are reacting and the fights that they're having, that's a fight. It's a normal fight.
Yeah,
And like even when they're on the platform where it's just sort of like everyone's spinning around and like the floor's moving, but what they're doing is we've seen a fight before.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. But what I'm saying is I want it to like kind of chisel it all down into that. But really, though, for most of those sequences where they're doing the bonkers shit, they use the bonkers shit in a way I haven't seen before. Like, where you're falling sideways through the dimensions of New York City, and, like, he falls... Like, it was just cool.
Right,
I was like, wow,
New York City to smash Doctor Strange's head into some glass.
Right,
You know
but even
It's
that,
like, wow,
I even
okay,
mean,
that's
like,
awesome.
when it just starts getting in weird.
Yes.
When it's just, like, it doesn't matter where they are or where they're falling through.
And also, I think I also intended to, again, I give filmmakers credit here where, like, without a sort of fairly well-honed story and us understanding what's going on, those visuals would get sort of exhausting and annoying, and you know what I mean? Like, it's all one of those things where it's like, that fight scene does work because I understand that they're running away and I understand that the bad guys have, etc. You know, it's one of those, like, examples where, like, it could have easily been one of those things that, like, gets out of hand. Like, the filmmakers get completely lost in it, and I think, you know, we'll get more into, like, story stuff later, but it's one of those examples of, like, it still requires quite a bit of sophistication to, like, have all that creativity, but still understand, like, okay, but we need to remember what's going on. We need to remember what the mission is. We need to remember,
absolutely,
you know.
absolutely.
So people are harping on the simplicity of the story.
Well,
that
I'll
is the weak
go there
point,
in a second.
right?
I just wanted to touch on something really quick. When it comes to the visuals, I was really thinking about how I wanted to phrase this today, and I think I came up with, it's incredible to have even conceptualized of some of the shit that they do in this movie. And I found myself impressed at just the thoughtfulness behind the sequences as well as their execution. And I'm like, that is so rare for me. Like, I'll see a movie and be like, hey, I like that idea, but it, you know, it didn't look that great. Or that looked awesome, but, you know, it's a plane crashing into a fucking whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
It's also remarkable to see a movie, strangely, where, like, oh, wow, this was VFX. Just, like, I know I'm watching a VFX, but I'm actually enjoying them. Like, as opposed to a sense of, like, it looks fake,
sure.
or you're trying to do that. It was more like oh wow, some computer artists, etc., like, worked really hard to create this.
There's no real life reference for, like, house-sized planets that are, like, green and blue and look like Mars. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
That doesn't exist.
But you know what's funny is that those are anchored in, to go just completely technically, the fact that his CGI, like his body, as he was spinning around, looked really good the entire time.
Yeah, it did.
And it would keep, and I know it was a mix of, sometimes it actually was him, and it was, you know, they were mixing footage, and then if he got far away, it would turn into, like, a CGI body. But I think because the whole time you're focusing on him falling and flipping and hitting this and blah, 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 I don't know, it was easier just to be like, this is so, because it is, I mean, think about the what if factor alone when you're watching those sequences. That's a huge part of your own imagination when you're watching it, and the fun, and just being like, what would that be like to just all of a sudden realize that you're flying out away from the earth?
Right.
Like, it starts with him, like, like bursting across the curvature of the earth.
Yeah.
And that is just it's just that what if moment where you're just able to watch it and play pretend.
Yeah.
And be like, this is bonko. What if I was seeing this? This is insane. Like,
my favorite thing, going back and listening to these episodes, we get to see the evolution of whatever this word is that you're starting to invent. Because
bonko?
I think last week you went, it's absolutely not so bongo crazy. So it's just like, it's just gonna become like just.
It's absolutely.
Dude, it's bees, baby. We got the boat.
Okay, so simplicity of the
story. That's what people. That's fairly so. That's a thing that people are saying is like the weak. And if I really had to put them in the columns and tally it up, yeah, maybe I would say that that's maybe then the weak thing in it. But even still, it's not weak. It's not the simple story isn't weak. It's maybe the weakest, like, part of what this movie is.
It's not that it's weak. It's that it's vanilla. This is the most superhero movie that I've ever seen. It hits all of the beats of an origin story, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's hard for me because you can do that to so much. You can break it down into like, wow, it just hit all these beats. But I guess why I forgive it and why it didn't matter was because I felt like I was still watching something new.
Sure, but I also think that this deep into the superhero movie game, if this is the 14th or whatever entry into the Marvel franchise, for me, it's unacceptable to be doing that. I don't think that, like, obviously it's not unacceptable because I like the film and it's going to make money, but it's like, really though? Because if you recall, when they announced this as going full production,
they said no more origin stories?
No more origin stories.
Yeah,
this is going to happen in medias res and we're just going to have Doctor Strange. But me at the time, I was like, you could have done that for Spider-Man.
He's the
not
one
for
guy.
Doctor Strange.
He's the one guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, because it's funny because as soon as when you were saying that you were bringing up that quote, genuinely the first place
Yeah.
I went to is like, yeah, but for this one,
That's literally the only one that you need to do the origin story.
No, I
And
agree.
it's a shame that we've seen this so many times that it's just like, okay, but even some of the stuff at the beginning where we're starting to be introduced to Doctor Strange, like with the medicine stuff, it's fucking boring, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, but he's again, it's
first 20 minutes
it's
just don't
different
do it for me.
enough though. Like, yes, it's the Tony Stark framework. Arrogant dude loses the, like, you know what I mean? He's brought down to earth and then has to find his retribution in like a different whatever.
Yes.
And like that's fine, but like he doesn't really act the same as Tony Stark. He's not the same as Tony Stark.
I don't think
His
so.
problem isn't the same as Tony
I don't
Stark.
think so, and I wasn't comparing him to Tony Stark.
I mean,
I was
even-
talking about the archetypal origin superhero.
I mean, even just things like, well, because I think, I'm a big believer in, like, if you're gonna tell something familiar, you have to do it in a, in a different way, and I've always looked at, like, Marvel a little bit by this point as, television in a way. Like, we're watching a really great show that's just playing out on the big screen, and, like, it was just even things like, I remember when it started, I was enjoying the fact that it started with, like, it started with the bad guys. Like, it just started with the villain, like, and a pretty, like, I was a little surprised by the decapitation.
oh my god, yeah.
Like, I remember it would always be like a little touch that I would find like interesting or different enough that, like, because I agree with the criticism, but it would even be things like, for instance, actually when he's brutal, when he like tells Rachel McAdams to leave.
Yeah.
That got a big reaction in the audience, and I remember I thought, like, you could call it being overly economical with, like, they just have to get this out of the way, but I was like, no, good on you for, like, having him truly be a dick.
Yeah.
Like, his line was like,
Yeah, he's an asshole.
his line was like actually awful. It wasn't one of those, like, it wasn't one of those moments where you go, yeah, but the audience sympathized with him. It was like, no, like, I don't think anyone could read that scene any other way than, like, she's totally right to leave. Which I thought, like, things like that, I remember just being like, appreciating those little touches. You know what I mean? Like,
But of course, I liked that line where he pushes her away, because I actually think that what he's saying had like a kernel of truth to it, where he's not just like completely lashing out and saying asshole things. He's this egomaniacal, like, I don't really want to call him an asshole because I don't think they've established that enough. Like, I mean, obviously you're supposed to draw from the fact that, okay, he's kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
But I don't think they gave me enough Doctor Strange up to that point, like saying stuff and actually expressing that he's an asshole. I digress. But what he's saying, where he's just like, I don't want to be pitied. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, I can do everything by myself, and it's. And then when the watch breaks, that's kind of his last severing tie to his old life. You know what I mean? He goes, it's the only thing I have, and then it breaks, and it's like, oh, okay, so now he can completely start anew. I don't know. That kind of like burning your world down to rebuild it.
Then here's where, in thinking about it over the last 24 hours or whatever, here's where I do have some reasonable beef, I would say.
Okay.
In the simplicity of the origin story, however, I think that what was missing was he's kind of okay with it pretty quick.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
no, it's definitely it's also an more so than, like, Batman Begins or something. Like, it's an undefined amount of time that he's there.
Yeah.
Sort of.
And you know what confused me though is that before he crashed, you pointed out to him that he gets the phone call and it's about Rhodey,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, it's just an interesting thing where he's a 35-year-old male. His legs were crushed in some kind of, crash in a armor, whatever
Right.
the hell he says, and he goes like, I don't know about that one.
Right. And so that's Rhodey, but that then means that before he became Doctor Strange,
Yeah, that
Civil
fucks up
War
the-
happened.
No, don't think about it, because it fucks up the whole timeline, because in Winter Soldier, when the guy goes, we're keeping tabs on
Yeah.
everybody, Stephen Strange would not have been Doctor Strange at that point. Don't think about it.
that was the first thing I thought of. It's like, why even do the nod of put it on that part of the timeline?
Well, it's very clear that
or were we wrong?
They
Was that
didn't-
not a nod to that?
that was... What do you mean a nod?
Was it not a nod
It was
to-
absolutely a nod to that.
His name is James Rhodes. I don't know.
Yes.
That could have been
His
any
spine
James
was
Rhodes.
crushed in a fucking
Iron Man suit.
Yeah, accident or whatever. That's exactly what happens to Rudy. It had to be Rudy.
All right, what do we got? Who do we got? Oh, well, there's this guy who in Marvel's Civil War, Captain America.
Yeah, the Vision, he accidentally died. He didn't mean to. He just fucked up real bad on this one.
Well, that could be anybody. But I will say, yeah, he was so okay with it so quickly that was a thing where you get so much of the what the fuck when he's in that first expand your mind sequence and getting thrown through all the universes and everything. And then he does the teach me thing and he's so stunned. But then where was that, like, again, it's the tissue scene. It's when I say tissue, I don't mean cry scene. I mean, flesh, like tissue.
Yes, like,
connective tissue.
Right, sure.
Okay? We all clear. So when after he's been seeing this, he says, teach me, and okay, yeah, he's going to get taught. Then when he's like, everything I've known is wrong. All the things that I thought were important, the scale that I was living my life on is not the scale to which the universe exists or lives its own life. Like, you never really had him, like, reconcile with his insignificance.
Yeah, exactly.
Or his, not even his insignificance, but his just wrong thinking. Mm-hmm. And then it's fine if, like, what's funny is that would be quelled right there if he has that moment, and then we skip ahead and he's been being taught and he's opening portals, and it's like, because to me, where it happened in the movie where when he was having trouble opening the portal and he was making sparks in the air, I'm like, that's amazing, you're making sparks with your mind. Like,
oh, I'm no good at this. It's like, you couldn't do that before.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh man, I can't create a portal to another dimension.
When you
He's
really
all annoyed.
think about the whole thing is that he realizes, like, oh, I want power on a cosmic scale.
Right.
That's why he does it. So he never has to come to terms with his insignificance in the universe because he's not anymore. Like, being the Sorcerer Supreme.
It's all those things where it's that these were fixable by a slight, and I could see how I could see how in writing these things maybe they slip through the cracks when you're looking, because these aren't like Batman vs Superman problems where you're like, how did anyone read that sentence and think that it was fine? Yeah. I could see that slipping through the cracks, but it was an easy fix of, like, the photographic memory thing.
Right. That
could have been, if we heard about that before, or saw the demonstration of it where someone shows him the chart, and then the other doctor comes by and says, no, that's my chart, and then he's like, spouts off everything that was just on it. It's like, I hate that you can do that's the scariest shit in the world. Why do you do that?
Absolutely.
And then we're like, oh, so he can remember everything always.
Absolutely. But I also think that's what the Pete Seeger thing was supposed to be, where he's talking about the music, and he's like, oh, that's side 2.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair, actually.
To go back to that point, though, of him having a didactic memory and going like, oh, I remember everything. Don't they say, hey, forget everything you know how to do, and, like, everything you knew before was wrong, but medicine still matters, like, keeps him alive, and somehow just, like, taking a picture of the book with your brain, you can learn the spell. Like, she says you need to practice all. Like, that shit is so...
It's almost like a
I wouldn't mind the MacGuffin if they hadn't specifically... Or not a MacGuffin, I apologize. If they hadn't specifically said, like, hey, none of that matters now, and then have it matter in the story.
Sure. I mean, you could even argue that the line "forget everything you know" and "how did you become a doctor, study and practice" are contradictions,
right?
Like, to some degree, right? Like, I mean, it isn't fully, like, because the idea is he has to learn new stuff. He has to learn a larger significance rather than what he used to know. But in a way, it's funny, his previous skills of remembering and learning, like,
you know what, like. Just to talk about the scale of the magic, where it's like, forget everything you know. There's a whole world out there of fire fans and blasty hands. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all like magic.
Right, yeah,
it's just straight, like, magic ass magic, like, magic missile.
Take out your bling bling zappy ring.
Exactly.
When was this named? About 1963.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me when franchises that feature things like this. And it's funny, I would even apply this to Harry Potter, by the way. It's funny to me when you have things that are technically limitless.
Yeah.
In terms of potential scale in, like, a fantasy world. I would find it interesting where I go, well, how come in other sort of not quite as successful fantasy films, not quite as successful sci-fi films, do they really bother me? And in other films, somehow you just kind of go with it. And I always think to myself, it always comes down to, well, if you're grounded enough in what the characters are going through, you begin to question for some reason less. Like, rules are important, and like the inner nerd enjoys that stuff.
Right.
But for instance, you know, like in a world where hypothetically you could do seemingly anything,
right?
Because we don't know what's in all these books. We don't know and most of the time we're learning that, like you said, there's a blasty shield, there's a this, there's a that, there's a they can make this, they can do this with time, they can whatever.
Right.
But they kind of get away with it by like, oh well, the bad guy stole a page from a book and now he knows a bunch of shit.
Right.
Like, and now he's and Strange doesn't know because he's learning. So like, and so for some reason that's enough. For some reason you're able to then watch it and be like, oh well, I guess he's not as strong as that guy.
Right.
Like, but it's interesting because, you know what I mean? Like, it is weird because it is very undefined. Like, what's possible, what isn't. I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know. I the more I'm thinking about, even though his character. See, this is why this is stupid sometimes, because like, I'm not sure this is even if we even should be digging into the rules even as much as like, it's like,
well, we're allowed to pick it
you're
apart.
allowed, of course.
It still runs.
Of course,
the machine
you're allowed.
still runs. This thing still works as a movie.
But I'm just trying to think of like, when I'm there and I'm watching, I almost didn't care about his emotion. That's what's funny is I almost wasn't worried about his emotional journey after a certain point.
Yeah.
He's just there. Now he's magic, and now he does magic. Yeah. And I'm like, right on, motherfucker, show me more cool shit.
I mean, I think something I consistently give Marvel credit for, and is the fact that they like, and it's the same thing I said, to be honest, early on when I was just complimenting these action scenes. I think Marvel do a good job at like taking, all right, we're gonna do the big, crazy summer blockbuster ending, but instead of doing the thing you've seen a million times before, like in Thor 2, we're gonna do like, they're gonna hop around portals and we're gonna do some crazy funny shit there, and it's gonna be entertaining as you're watching it because, oh my god, Thor's on the London Underground or whatever. Oh, we've got Ant-Man, alright, we're gonna do your big typical action scene, but it's in a small child's bedroom, and it's gonna be creative, and it's gonna be like, they get it, we have to do the big showdown, but how are we gonna do it in a way that is like creatively interesting and different from what you've seen before, and with enough humor and elements that make you go like, oh, fun. Like, I'm enjoying like seeing what you guys do with this.
I don't know how familiar you guys are with like video games, but if you talk about like Eastern versus Western video games, a lot of Japanese video games kind of have this thing where the level is just like the level, okay? It's just there, and you're playing it for that boss battle. And the boss battles where shit gets really inventive and interesting, and that's what this formula is. Like, this stuff exists to give us these breathtaking action scenes, and that's okay. Yeah, I'm cool with that. Yeah, to be perfectly honest.
And we like him. Here's the thing: his as far as him as a character, him as whatever the core of the heart of the movie is, as him as a person. Every one of his reactions and all of his scenes, I liked him the whole time, and I liked the way he spoke. I liked, you know what I mean? Like, that's where it was different enough from, you know, Tony Stark or just whatever XYZ hero.
Or BVS. Where it's just, they're doing a similar thing where it's just like, okay, we just want to get us there to the action sequences.
But you're meanwhile not enjoying the people.
Absolutely. Or I think maybe Doctor Strange is more honest about what it is, where it doesn't have to add these like big themes that it wants to tackle and then doesn't. You know what I mean? It kind of keeps itself low profile, and that doesn't work a lot of the time. Like, sometimes it can slow down. If you're looking for a groundbreaking, amazing Marvel movie, this isn't it, but you're going to be fucking entertained.
Yeah. And also, like, it's funny because I was having a long conversation with my roommate about sort of like the merits and maybe the merits and criticisms you could have of Marvel and what they do and all these things. And it's funny because, you know, I the argument that I've heard this multiple times is like, there isn't a Marvel movie that's sort of as iconic and like memorable maybe as like The Dark Knight. But to which the challenge I always come up with that though is that I say, yeah, but you're not going to remember one movie with Marvel. You're going to remember the characters. You're going to remember the entire series, the sort of event. And as much as I'm sort of happy to hear sort of criticisms of like sameness, etc., like, I think they reinvent themselves like enough, especially in like a mainstream sense, that they play around enough with their formula that like I said, it's like these action sequences are creative on a major blockbuster level. I guess the way I felt was like, again, I've said, so there's two key points here. One is, if we want to complain about mainstream movies, I think complaining about Marvel isn't the right place because they're doing creatively interesting things with the mainstream blockbuster formula.
Sure.
And then the other part being, if you're like, oh, superhero fatigue, am I right? Like, we're gonna get sick of these movies soon. Well, then, you know, not yet. because they're too
they
good.
keep
They're
doing-
too
and they also-
consistently interesting or subtly different.
Yeah,
or
right, they are, exactly.
The quality level is still at a point where I'm like again, I'm not one of these I'm not sort of a Marvel fanboy who'll defend them no matter what, but when these movies cease to interest me, I'll be happy to skip one.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
but they're consistently good enough to a point that I'm like, I want to see what they do with the Black Panther solo movie. I want to see
course,
one of the reasons I'm excited about Spider-Man is because there's just a part of me that goes, it's not even and I'm a massive Spider-Man fan. That's the one difference is I'm more of a Spider-Man fan than a Marvel fan. But weirdly, when I talk to my friends who were kind of done with Spider-Man and then they saw him in Civil War, they genuinely have this thing of wonder what Marvel will do with this character.
Right.
You know what I mean? Hey, we've had the other movies, we've had the Sony movies. Wonder what Marvel will do. What will they do with it? And I bet you it'll be different. It'll be different from what we've seen before.
I'm kind of scared about Spidey because I want to say tonally they've established the Marvel Universe as being Spidey-esque. So if you read comic books, most books have their own tone. You know what I mean? The Punisher book is not the same as a Spider-Man book by any means, or Captain America book for that matter. So we kind of all have that everybody quips thing, which I'm afraid we're gonna reach critical mass on.
Yeah, but what they're doing, and you saw it in Civil War already, where he was different in how he was funny, it was more innocent, and it is more bullying and more they all don't do that.
Yeah,
they're all
that's
clever.
true.
They're all you should have taken the stairs, and he's more holy shit, I'm so sorry. Walk much, you know what I mean, and that's why there's innocent. It's they kept him a kid. He's gonna feel like a kid in all these battles.
Some of the humor in this didn't land for me, and this is gonna sound insane, but I'm watching it and I'm going, "Oh, you're trying to make me laugh." And
I feel that sometimes.
But wait a minute. Yes, they are.
It's why get mad about it?
Of course they are, but it's just you're trying to do it in a very specific way that is related to your brand.
Yeah.
And it feels disingenuous. Is it a giggle?
There would be moments when I would there were moments where I agree, and there were definitely little examples of there were touches where I was that's smart or
Absolutely.
brilliant, things
The door opening?
well, exactly like that, or right after a death scene, to just to have this little moment where Rachel McAdams walks in through the door and just sees the cape, and she just goes, she just doesn't want to fucking deal with the fact that there's a cape. She doesn't want to question that. Just little touches like that. I remember I would be like another one that for some reason sticks out, and I remember watching it being this is again something that I could see this backfiring so hard. I always use two examples where I'm Ant-Man becoming a giant could have been one of those things where I know it's in the comics, but it could have been one of those things that you go what the
Christ.
and for some
you
reason
get
they pull it off, literally doing a sequence where Chris Pratt distracts someone by dancing. Could have easily backfired.
Backfired for me, to be honest, but-
and it's I like it, but it's an example of where I always admire it is that they're willing to take the risk.
Sure.
They do it with the Mandarin. That's a risk. A lot of people have issues with it, but I'm I think that's a risky decision.
I love the Mandarin,
Yeah, same. I'm on Team Mandarin as well.
Well, also they
but-
retcon that.
Yeah.
With the Marvel short, but
Yeah.
And they're never that is literally just
the fans.
All right, so
Yeah.
we gotta fix this. Can we get Ben Kingsley again?
But
Do
when
you have
I-
any idea how much money that's gonna be?
yeah, but they're really mad.
Yeah, but I think the thing I think though in this, for instance, a moment where I remember being that's ballsy was a mixture of, all right, we just had the Sentient Cape.
Yeah, dude,
and then the cape
part.
tells us, and then the cape tells him, grab that thing, and he throws this piece of armor onto the bad guy, and there's this very physical scene where the bad guy's sort of hey, and which I know isn't reading on a podcast because I'm performing it.
That was a good choice making the noises with it.
But
I think
it's funny because I'm and it's this very physically funny scene. It's sort of and again, for me that kind of works because it was interesting how they then somehow did transition it into the scene where they have a parlay, even though he's in this ridiculous But again, that to me was interesting. In a totally different example. This is in a much more highbrow movie. But I remember having a similar feeling when this would be the mainstream blockbuster equivalent sort of action movie scene where would it be risky to make our bad guy look this silly?
Yeah.
It felt very similar in a way in Wolf of Wall Street when they just stopped that movie to have a very physical comedy scene with Leo being I'm gonna try and get down the stairs. And they stopped that movie movie to have him go like and be like freaking mental, and you're watching like a pretty like. You know, a movie that's making like bigger points about like greed and like, and then they do stop it for like, and it's a solid 2 minutes of him trying to get into that car, whilst he's on drugs. And again, it's one of those interesting.
I love that scene because I always thought of that as like kind of an older style filmmaking where there's a bit of everything in this movie.
Yeah,
like there's this drama, there's this it's comedy. The whole movie is very comedy-esque, but okay, regardless, we'll do it. We'll
You
maybe
know,
do a Wolf of Wall Street movie.
but
You
yeah,
just
you know,
you
I
just
don't know.
brought something to my
Tonal
attention.
transitions was
So, like,
basically the point.
As I say, and these are my biggest problem is that he hops on board a little quicker than I wanted to see. I needed one more scene where he was not so sure about learning this shit. Do you know what I mean?
As far as what?
What do you mean? Like him just being
like-
oh, there's everything is possible, and then immediately we're cutting to him like getting his room and he's fine. And he's just like, okay, yes, I guess I'm gonna learn how to open portals now. And yes, they skip time, but like it's not clear really.
I mean, I
I
suppose-
love that beat. I really loved it because it's like he comes in like
It's anime.
Yes, sure.
He's at Sorcerer High School.
I will get to anime. I will get to anime a little bit later, but he has nothing, right? He shows up to Kathmandu with absolutely nothing. He comes to this place and he's given up and he thinks she's some kind of bullshit guru. She shows him the secrets of the universe. You know what I mean? Like takes him to like all conceivable dimensions, and he comes back. And the only thing he would want to do is learn how to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's what I would do. Like, if my mind was opened up to infinite possibilities, I'd be like, fucking teach me how to be a fucking sorcerer now.
I mean, it was interesting how, like, on the one hand, it would oblige certain cinematic principles, like it would do, you know, setups and payoffs and like, oh, well, you know, this has to come back in some way or whatever. But for instance, it actually did something that gauged pretty well, I would say, is like, they didn't spend too much time on the, well, now my hands are fixed, so I'm gonna go back to being a doctor. Like, it was like, no, of course he's more interested in this. Like,
I'm glad they avoided that.
or like, yeah, like, we're gonna address that he has to apologize to Rachel McAdams, but we're not gonna be like, has to be like a big thing.
Right.
And like, you know, again,
Right.
like they understand that like that would bog things down. Like,
Absolutely.
you know, like, it's one of those examples of like, it's well gauged. Like they know what the more interesting.
Okay, so here's more what it is then. I guess if we had the whole thing where he gets real wrapped up in it and it's like, of course, now he's one track mind, he's focused, I want to learn, and we find out he's been there for a year, and then he comes out of it, and then when he's back in New York for the first time, we have the moment of him, because it doesn't really happen when he shows up. He's kind of like the weathered hero who stumbles back to, you know, his hometown or whatever, you know what I mean? And then it's like, he's just fine with being dressed the way that he is, and she's like, what the hell? And now, but here's what I was going to say, the point of this whole thing.
Does that bother you that he did that?
No, it was just more like, I didn't need a wink, I just needed maybe an acknowledgement. And he does a little bit, like, where he's telling her where he's been, and he doesn't know, and it's not a cult, and, like, it's hard to explain about. But, like, I don't know, there was a lot of very accepting people in this movie, but I think maybe, and this is the point I keep trying to make, is that maybe because in the Marvel Universe at this point, when you're pointing out to me that like she sees the floating cape and is just like, fuck.
Right.
Like,
there's aliens, dude.
Yeah, these people
There's
have now
aliens.
seen so much shit that I wonder if now, like, it blew my mind when he comes out from the astral plane.
Yeah.
And she was just sort of fine, like, she just kind of for a second goes, Steven, how you doing there?
yeah.
And then they would go away.
But it's interesting because that tone is something, actually speaking, and like without like linking it too much to what I was saying earlier about like they do kind of ballsy decisions with some of these, like whether it's comedic transitions or whether it's where to take things seriously, and they don't always strike it fine, but actually an example of something where they know that we've seen tons of like bad, in a way, like the Dormammu stuff is actually a good example of what I was talking about earlier, and it ties into what we're talking about. Like they kind of know that the audience expects these things. We've seen movies where there's like a big real bad behind the smaller bad, and he has to go talk to some kind of cloud or god or a figure who we haven't met. And we've seen tons of movies where that scene is bad. That scene is just like the, you know,
of course.
And what Marvel sort of and what they sort of did in this, which was quite smart, was like, yeah, it's gonna be kind of a funny scene. Like we're gonna do like a montage of him getting murdered every single time, and it's funny because it is kind of effective. Like he shows up, and he gets fucking obliterated, and there's just a few seconds where as the audience you get going, what the fuck? Like, and then he comes back and we see him get murdered like tons of times, and every time the comedy cut, it's explicitly comedy, like murder,
absolutely.
Dormammu, like every time. And it was one of those things where I was like, they know that like him talking to the cloud is fucking dumb.
Do you know?
So they kind of, you know what I mean? Like they know that, so
Yeah.
they kind of go, all right, what are we gonna do with it? What are we gonna do that makes it creative
You know
and
why
interesting?
that reads is funny? Because there's no music. Like, he even does that thing where he's just like, if I have to die forever, it's worth it so I could save Earth. And then, like, they keep doing it and doing it and doing
Yeah.
it, and there's no, like, dramatic swell or
Well,
anything
a little
like that.
bit
It's
there was
funny.
by the end of it. There was before when Dormammu's finally like set me free.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
whatever.
it builds
but,
up
like,
to
when
there.
he's dying, they're playing that totally straight.
Yeah,
and I think
those
that
first
really,
couple
really works.
times. Yeah.
To go back, I wanted to go back and touch on the cape real quick, where you're just like,
Oh man.
that could have backfired. It's awesome. Cape is awesome.
The cape is the carpet from Aladdin.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Where it's just like clearly this is the flying carpet. But you know, the first time we see it, it fucking swings off the thing and saves Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange comes up looking cool as shit, like in like the Doctor Strange anime as fuck pose, where he's like getting ready to cast some goddamn spells. That was the anime, and then it's immediately funny. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, this thing is cool, and it's also funny.
Yeah.
And like,
I love that shit.
people's ape brains are gonna go, I like it. You
Yeah,
know what I
no,
mean? Like, that's why it doesn't backfire, because it's not weird.
Yeah.
It's just charming.
No, I agree, because it's again, and speaking of like, again, I want to avoid always using the word like that it is brave, but again, to do midway an action scene where like, and again, in a tonally, I understand that it works for Marvel because they've established a tone and they go with that tone and they commit to it. Which is always the way I describe this stuff. It's like, it's about committing to whatever you pick. It's about like not trying to do too many. But like, yeah, in addition to like the funny scene where the villain gets, strung up in a funny way, 2 seconds before that, we had Doctor Strange wants to run a certain direction and the cape is not letting him, and he's running in one place, and it's a wide shot. Like, it's again, like, and you could argue like, there was a different filmmaker who would look at that and validly, if they were making a different movie, go, I don't know, man, it's the first confrontation between like our main villain and like, I don't know, I think we need to see him get like beaten down and like lose so that, you know, the audience like understand how serious the villain is.
But they don't care about the
But exactly, it's, well,
That's
really
there's
don't give a
another.
shit.
I mean, it is weird when you think about it that way, and there is a little bit of best guy syndrome where it's just like, he's just really good immediately.
best guy.
But not even, okay, maybe not immediately, because they do the thing where they send him off and he's in the mountains and he can't.
But then he becomes the
I
raddest.
am gonna applaud the fact that they,
Baddest.
in hindsight, like, because actually I thought that was fairly well set up. Like, this is a post-credit spoiler, I guess, but like that Chew as Hell Ejiofor's character is gonna go bad. Like,
I
because
didn't
Baron Mordo.
well, because what I liked about that was, you know, it was actually quite well planted in like the whole like, I overcame my demons, you should learn to trust this person, and you're like, oh, he's on this side, and it's like, no, he didn't overcome his demons, he has his own problems. Like, but then what else is good about that? Like, because speaking of like certain things becoming a little bit, you know, it's like, all right, we've got another white guy, we've got a black best friend, got a love interest, got a mentor, like, you know, it's like one of those like, it's like one of those like funny things where it's like, it would get, like, in a way, it's really good that he's a bad guy, simply because, just imagine if it was like, you could do a comedy scene where like Anthony Mackie like hangs out with Chiwetel Ejiofor and with Don Cheadle, and they're all like, all right, so we're all the black best friends. Like,
Dude, this is we talked about this when we talked about goddamn Civil
We're starting a
War.
new Avengers. Just for us 3 black guys.
Yeah, and we'll get Luke Cage.
No, they won't.
No, nobody wants Luke.
Not to be. Alright, it's gonna sound a little mean, but if Marvel knows what's best for him, they're gonna keep him out of the movies, because I don't think he's got what it takes to like.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe to sort of be there.
Right.
Like he's there for one of the big Infinity War.
Yeah,
parts,
in
but,
an
like,
Infinity War moment, have a moment where like the Defenders, like, you just show that they're on the ground and are potentially about to be obliterated if Thanos is about to do something crazy. Might be fun.
But who knows what would happen if you got like a real ass motherfucking director telling Mike Coulter what to do. You know what I mean? Like, and you got the full power movie studio going like, hey, you can't not deliver that face, like that you can't not make that facial expression like you're doing right now.
Yeah, it's also actually like, and speaking of the like those like casting elements, again, I would never excuse. And I don't know exactly where it stands with what Scott Derrickson has said about it or something, but it obviously, we don't have to talk about this for too long, but like the political outrage before the movie came out with regards to the whitewashing of the Ancient One.
Okay.
Which I think it was interesting because having seen the movie, there's a part of me that goes, and this isn't, again, to apologize for it, but it's more like, I can see that this would have probably been a well-intentioned bad call.
Right.
Like, it's one of those things where it's like... Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Because when your arm is on the table like that.
Sorry. And so, I think what I mean by that is, so, like, you know, either way they were going to do something wrong, right? Like, if they cast it as an old Asian man, you have old Asian man teaches white person powers, and then they're the lead. Maybe... the gender bending of it is kind of progressive, because otherwise you would have had only Rachel McAdams as a love interest.
Yeah.
Maybe should have gone for an Asian, like, woman. Like, maybe, you know, like, maybe go for... Right, like,
But then you
like,
would still have, though, the Asian Eastern
but,
teacher.
but so, I think if I look at that casting, though, I genuinely think that they were thinking, okay, we can't just have a love interest, so we'll make the Ancient One a woman, Tilda Swinton's a great actress, we'll have a... You know, we can't just, you know, we have Wong, and we have Chiwetel Ejiofor, and then, you know, we're representing better. I can imagine that the thinking came from a good place.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
But then they misgauged some stuff. And like,
Tilda Swinton is probably the most androgynous performer out there, like major actress. And I, you know, somebody brought up a good point where they didn't need to gender her at any point. Like, if they had gone this whole movie without saying her and just using, like, the pronoun them...
Get back to where we started. The whole point was that I saw someone who was really angry about it being another white man learns magic to heal himself and blah, blah, blah. And it's like... I can... There's probably a part of it that's offensive, because I'm trying to think about it, and it's probably something more on the lines of, like, it is the representation thing, where it's like, if the majority... of times we're seeing Asian characters, they're mystical or they do something cool, and then there's the fucking vast 99.99999% of human beings, but just not, let alone Asian people who are just normal humans. Yeah. And it's like, imagine if people who looked like me, every time I saw a movie, they were always like stabbing something, like, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
Or they always they were always doing hula hoops.
Right.
I'd be like, fucking, god damn it! Like, again with the fucking hula hoops on me, like.
Yeah. No, I
don't even like hula hoops.
No, it's true. I mean, it's and again, it's like one of those examples of something where you have to be able to, you know, and I always aware that this is a privilege, but it's one of those examples where I always go, like, you have to be able to acknowledge that the film might be good and might be fun and might be all those things, whilst acknowledging, and in a larger societal context, this is an issue. Like, it is, because like if I look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's like people who look like me, I'm like, I could be a spider guy. I could get an iron suit. I could turn into a green. I could turn into the Hulk. I could be a Norse god. I could, like, you know. It's like, it's true. Like, if you're a black guy beyond Black Panther, which is like, you could be like, I could be the friend.
I could be the friend of an iron guy.
If he gives me the suit, I could be his friend.
He gives me his old suit that he doesn't want anymore.
Right.
Like,
you could have the one I didn't paint.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely see it. I mean, like, I guess it was more. I'm unpleasable when it comes to that kind of stuff, where it's just like, if a movie goes out of their way to cast outside of the race to make a progressive point, I go, oh, fuck you. Like, what? Come on. Like, is that really what you're trying to do, or are you trying to win points? Then the other side, I'm just like, can we have less white guys in things?
Right.
I have no opinion on this, I've come to realize.
I guess I just didn't like that it was so angry about that trope. And it's like, I don't think we need to be so I don't know. Like, I don't feel like that's worth the harping on it.
Like, I think,
because it's also in this it wasn't even really like.
I challenge, for instance, the whole, you know, Black Widow needs her own movie idea. You know, like, personally.
Right.
Like, I challenge that in terms of, like, I don't know, she's like a really good supporting character who shows up in other things. Like, to me, it makes sense that they're giving Captain Marvel her own movie, and not Black Widow, because it's like one of those things where it's like, it's one of the things I've liked about Black Widow is, like, a good character in a TV show. It's like, I like the episodes that she's in. I like it when she like, and I think they've done a great job with taking her from what she was in Iron Man 2, where she was just kind of like, oh, who's this sexy spy, to like in Captain America 2, it was kind of like, oh, cool, like she's actually just like there, and she's just a friend, and she's like really cool. I don't know if I need an entire episode about like, I don't know, how she got there, or it's like one of those examples where I'm like, I don't know, I'm more interested in a new character there.
But I think she needs her own movie.
Here's the only reason though, is like, it's more. She would be the first one of those movies where the center of it isn't someone with powers, and it's not the dude who's going to be the best guy. So it's like fun. Like she would do better. Not for nothing, I don't want to see a spy movie. I don't want to watch a Black Widow. I'm sorry, Black Panther. A Black Widow spy movie where she's fighting Hydra soldiers who also don't have powers. It's more that I want to see her. It's like how you said. Did we talk about this on the podcast? Like the Luke Cage monster movie. Like.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like I want to see Marvel do something where she's a person in an extraordinary circumstance where it's do the raid with Black Widow.
Absolutely.
But the people she's fighting are starting to turn into fucking lizards.
Black Widow's life. I don't want to see like.
Yeah, I don't want to see how she got there.
Sure,
it's like
absolutely.
I got enough of that in Age of Ultron.
Right. Absolutely. And I think she needs a movie just because she doesn't have permanence in the universe to me without her own movie. Because like I was just about to say, like I can't imagine the MCU without Black Widow. I absolutely can. I 100% can. And without Hawkeye, I could totally imagine it. Not Hulk, not Iron Man, not Captain America. She needs her own movie to establish her as her own thing and not as a supplement to the boys. Like, that's one of those things where it's just we need female representation in the Marvel movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like 3 years ago is when we need
No, I agree.
not 3 years from now when Captain America finally comes out.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it will be quite significant when we finally get to the point where like hopefully they all hang out at some point in the final Avengers, and like hopefully it slightly improves when we sort of go like, oh look, like hopefully Gamora will be more established by then, and we'll see Black Widow, and we'll see Scarlet Witch, and we'll see Captain Marvel by that point, and hopefully it'll like.
Did you guys see James Gunn talking about wanting to do a Nebula spin-off movie where it's just like, don't do that.
Yeah. Out of all of them.
Why would you do that?
Although, like, brief tangent, and like, I mean, it is actually related to. It is actually related to Doctor Strange, which is that we said this right. That, like one of the end credit sequences is Thor hanging out with Doctor Strange, and we all had that. Like, you have that. You still get those little. That little like childish goosebump moment of like, ooh, and they know that person, and ooh, like it still tickles you in a way, and that like while we were watching the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer, I remember like my friends and I in London, we were having fun imagining, because it was confirmed like Vin Diesel confirmed like Guardians of the Galaxy are going to show up in one of these future Avengers movies, and we were just saying like, what's fun about that is like beyond just imagining like, oh cool, so like what happens when I don't know. Peter Quill talks to Tony Stark or whatever. Right. Beyond that stuff, it's also funny about like what's that first moment going to be like? What's that first moment where they're introduced? And like one of the things,
if Marvel just drops their first F-bomb when they see the talking raccoon and the tree man, what the fuck?
Yeah, but we were talking about like because you have so many like already ways you can make that iconic. Whether it's like we're hearing something. I am Groot, whatever, but actually we were talking about like, you kind of want it to be like, they're in trouble somehow, and some S.H.I.E.L.D. operatives are doing a thing, and it's like, oh fuck, we have no one to like, defend this thing, and then it's like, guys, we have a transmission coming over the radio, and it's like, ooga chaka, ooga, ooga, like it's something like that, where you're just like, there's gonna be like, you know that whatever they do, there's been so many movies and there's so many things, whether they use I Am Groot, whether they use the music, whether they use
it's gonna be I Am Groot. We're getting a transmission. I am Groot.
Exactly, and everyone goes like, fucking nuts. Because it's one of those examples of like, that's what and this is when this is when you begin to feel that it's TV. Right. Because these things already. So you've got that like that knowledge is mainstream enough.
Yeah.
That
this
like
is the studio audience cheering when a character they like comes on in a sitcom.
Yes.
Yes. Exactly.
No, I agree. And like honestly, seeing Doctor Strange here at like with the sort of mainstream crowd on the first day is like, it does feel like one of these, in the positive sense. It feels like that sort of people coming together. We all kind of collectively know this universe.
Yeah.
And we cheer when our favorite things come on screen, and we know it, and everyone knows it well enough that it's like, it is sort of the one of the sort of uniting cultural sort of
We all
things.
just peer into this universe together for
Yeah.
a very brief moment in
Like,
time.
well, I remember once someone, and you know, it's the same as like, I always point to Star Wars when this happens, like just the collective, like, it's the Millennium Falcon,
Yeah,
and everyone
absolutely.
just goes nuts, and it's like one of those things where you go, we should cherish that these things still exist in a progressively sort of more scattered media landscape where everyone's into really specific
Sure, yeah.
stuff. Like, we don't really, you know, with religion on the way down, like,
Yeah.
think about times that you spend with your fellow man and culture collectively. You don't know these people, but you come together for something to experience collectively.
yeah, absolutely.
With nowadays, it's not church for a lot of people. For some people it is, where they have that community sense. But it's concerts and movies that are big enough to unite that many people.
And sports.
Yeah, no, sports. I agree. So it's just one of those examples of like, I don't know. It's like what I enjoyed about last night was honestly often those moments. It was like the big old like like that he shows up for the first time in costume, or the fact that you even had a bit of applause when someone saw the cape for the first time.
Sure.
Yeah,
Like that they were like, oh, that's gonna be a thing.
This
you know.
is why I will always see these films in theaters.
Right.
In theaters. Like, you know, they talk about the theater experience as dying is because, like people just aren't enthralled by movies anymore, I don't think, just because there's so much shit. But when, you know, you have that, like, almost religiosity, like that kind of investment in everything, it becomes a ritualistic experience. To go to a
I'll never forget the cut to like the applause that happened soon as Queens came on the screen in Civil War.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Like just the sort of like, you
Absolutely,
know,
we all knew.
Yeah.
Exactly.
and that's what I mean by like the sort of I am Groot transmission. It'll be exciting because whatever they do, it's like such a pleasure whoever that writer is gets to do that scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like it'll be fun. It'll be a moment that will go, oh, cool. You know.
Why didn't they show Loki in that credit scene where he goes like, "Why did you bring Loki here?" He says it specifically, and then they don't show it. You know what I mean? I thought that was weird.
He's
'cause-
shooting Skull
Well, that-
Island.
I was sitting there thinking like, it should have cut to Loki and he's fucking with one of the things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a great, like like the Eye of Agamotto,
Right.
and he goes like, "Please don't touch that," or something.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
We have one
They
of
should have
those
put Tom
moments.
Hiddleston in it. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it is also funny though because so again, like when people say Marvel movies blend together, in the way that again, I always compare it to a show. It's like you don't always remember isolated episodes. Like you might not remember which episode of Breaking Bad was the train episode.
Right.
But you'll be like, I don't know, which one's the train episode? You look it up and then you remember that's the scene that has that
absolutely.
thing. And what was credit to that sequence was like, you know,
It's a great scene. Watch it.
well, it was the fact that like, so for instance, as I was watching this, you know, you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know, most people didn't necessarily love Thor 2, or like the last time you saw the second Thor was probably when it came out, right? And it was funny how when he goes, we're looking for my dad, like we're looking for Odin, with my father, and you go, oh yeah. That was that plot line. I remember that plot line. I remember that Odin went missing at the end of that movie. Like it's interesting how, like a TV show, they just refresh your memory a little bit and you go, oh yeah, cool, that's where we're at in that story.
you know what's
that's what
funnier,
he's doing.
though?
Was this the primer for that?
That's not how it even ended, though. How it ended was like, oh my god, Loki kidnapped Odin.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how the beat ends with Loki's on the throne, pretending to be Odin.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
now they're just kind of like, we'll tell you that Thor figured that out.
Yeah.
And then now we need to find Odin.
Interesting. Well, I guess they're doing quite a bit of retconning in this universe.
Dude,
Just
it's big. You were talking about like even as far as the trying to do representation and trying to make sure that you are representing every group of people now that this thing is so big and now that so many people come together to watch it.
Yeah.
Like it just feels like that. What a fucking juggling act that must be at this point. Where it's all of these storylines. There's a tonal consistency that needs to happen with each movie.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of people who their story is affected by the story that happens in this one, and also trying to like.
And I think there's a reason.
Oh my God.
And I think there's a reason that they do what we just talked about. There's a reason that they do like, oh well, it's changed now. He's looking for this now. There's a reason that they play it so loose because there are people who, you know, the fan base is probably excited enough that like they'll have fun imagining what that in-between storyline is.
Yeah.
And the movie, and I think Marvel are totally okay with being like, we're just going to show you snippets, and like, that's already been dealt with, or like, you know, like, and I think...
That's what they did in Civil War, where suddenly he found Winter Soldier, right? You know what I mean? He was looking for him at the end of the movie, and then he found him, and they revealed that in an end credit sequence. Does he find him midway through the movie in
No,
Civil
so I
War?
don't even remember.
I don't recall, but I remember that being like the reveal. But also, it's
But I mean,
there's been 14,
It's
man.
a remarkably
like-
similar thing.
But it's in the same way that, like, for instance, let's say Ant-Man, right? Like they know that, you know, they do the joke, they dress it as a joke, like the sort of like, the first thing we do, we should call the Avengers.
yeah.
And then they don't call the Avengers, like, you know. But it's an example of one of those things where you go like, they're acknowledging it's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's one of those examples
That's
where
almost
like,
what I wish was happening with Rachel McAdams when he comes in through the thing, is her being like, oh God, okay, this is like an Avengers thing, is what, and that's now, and it's like fine, because but I haven't also just been sitting here trying to make this point again. I remembered it again. With everybody sort of just being okay, and like even Doctor Strange himself sort of maybe ingesting and jumping on board with being a sorcerer as quickly as he does. That might just be kind of now what we're gonna start seeing.
Sure.
Because now these people, it's like,
Well, 'cause-
they're gonna start being like,
I'll defend this. I will defend this because Doctor Strange is like revealed, the secrets of the universe are revealed to him. Of course, like he's not going to be concerned with other, reactions or whatever. Like he's thinking on such a high level at this point that he's just beyond it all.
It was
so when
like
he
I
comes
said,
through
though.
the portal and is just like, yeah, sure, I'm not going to address any of this.
but I don't know. It's again, these movies are all setting up their own rules or whatever it was about the tone of the movie up until that. It occurred to me, I was having a great time, but it occurred to me in the movie when he was there and he was teaching and he was, going and reading the books now. It's like, oh, this is just his life now.
Yeah.
And that's fine, insulated when he's just there. But then there was even like the first time they show him sitting next to everybody making the portals, I was like, is he really not gonna look at the other portals and be like, oh my God, this is weird.
No, that's fair.
Because it was just at a point in the movie where I was like, oh, I didn't realize we were on board yet.
But I just thought that's the kind of character he is, where he's like, yeah, this is happening, and I'm gonna be the best one.
But I think that's a product of the Marvel universe that they live in now, though, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I see that, but I also think that what you're talking about is very much a no offense, but like a you-style beat, like of the person like really ingesting it because they are the audience, right? At that point, they are the audience where it's just like, oh my God, like I need to react to this.
It's not even him as an audience thing. It's more that what struck me, why that plucked a wrong note, was that it was like, but wait, from what we know about him so far, you wouldn't think that he would just jump on board with this immediately.
In terms of where
You know
nerds
what I mean?
nerds can like start to, and I think we'll survive it in the exact same way we survived Prisoner of Azkaban, kind of ruining everything. If you wanted to be like too world buildy about it, like if you wanted to like oh wait, so we could use that thing. we could.
What are you talking about?
Like we could go back in time, sort of, in Harry Potter, and then this has a similar beat in that like, so could we technically the ending of the original Superman to any major problem that Thanos prevents? You could kind of at the same time. I think that honestly, it's one of those examples where like, you think you're like, wonder how they're going to address that. But I reckon it'll be similar to what they did with freaking I remember thinking I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to pay attention. Wonder how they're going to explain in the Avengers how Thor got there because they broke the bridge that brings him to Earth. And then when he shows up in the Avengers, he just says he just lands and Loki's like, ugh, how much dark matter did Dad have to send? And
amazing.
Exactly. Just one line and you just go, fine.
And
it's like one of those things.
Yes.
And there's a part of me that goes,
I appreciate that so much.
no, I agree. And they'll do a similar thing here where it's like, can't you just undo this? No, because of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, in the same way that, they to some degree even established that, even the Ancient One was hey, hypothetically I could live forever, but I've never seen beyond this point because I know this is where I die. So even there, they've already kind of written themselves out of there's no stakes. It's like, no, things can still go wrong.
I think that's very true to the universe where even in the comics, read any of the big crossover events, right? They all promise dimension shattering and like all the cosmic abilities and powers, and it all comes down to two dudes like hitting each other. You know what I mean? Like it always comes down to like Drax fighting Thanos hand to hand, and it's very.
They do at least in this at the end as far as like, oh, are they just gonna be able to turn back time all the time? I mean, what's his name says at the end like. You really think
shit's gonna
that
happen.
we just won? Like, there's gonna be a consequence for this.
Well, but
that's. I hope it's not just a one line.
They state the consequence where he says like you just set ripples throughout the multiverse with this shit. Where it says like, oh, the sanctum's down and we're open to attack. It's like a very similar thing to what they said with the aliens, where like we sent out a signal that we're ready to participate in this whatever this is, and they're gonna come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just hope that there's actually there is a ripple.
I mean,
you know what I mean, and like that there's a consequence for whatever they did in Hong Kong.
We talked about this in Civil War. You know, like I think the one thing, and it's the criticism I hold the most to Marvel. Like I defend them a lot, but where I agree is that I'm just like like. Not all of them. I get that we're going to go forever, and that's fine. But there's just the thing that just goes, but when some of these characters' journeys start ending, when some of these characters start dying or retiring, they don't all have to fucking die. I don't need to see not every character's journey has to end in death, but when conclusions start happening to characters, and hopefully they'll be satisfying and emotional and interesting, that'll elevate all of it. Yeah. In my opinion, like when
validate all of it.
Exactly. Like when Captain America dies doing something, or Tony retires, or whatever, it's going to be nice to go back to Iron Man 1, and then
it ends.
and watch every movie that has him in it, and be like, oh, I just watched the Tony Stark
it's a
story.
Character arc.
Yeah.
Right.
Fuck.
Yeah. Like it's kind of like, you know, that is going to be necessary at some point. That's like the thing that I'm just like, and I hope they do it.
Now it's something to look forward to. They're going to lose. They're going to have to lose somebody in Infinity War. I think there's going to be sort of a like, oh, what the fuck? People were already weirded out that nobody died in Civil War.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. No, I was furious.
I thought for sure we were losing someone.
I was mad that Quicksilver died in Avengers 2. Where it's like, really? The dude you just introduced that we don't care about, you killed?
Yeah.
No one's missed his. Nobody's missed
like,
him in any of these other movies.
Hawkeye should have died protecting him. What should have happened.
It would have been fascinating. Right. Yeah, that would have been interesting. No, I agree. And it would have been fascinating to, like, and I agree with Hawkeye, it would have been interesting because you would have just spent the time setting up his family.
Yeah, but in the same, I think they did that on purpose.
Of course,
right?
he did.
Where they set it up like, oh, he's gonna die, and then he's.
Yeah. But it's in the same way that, like, for instance, you know, like. Again, like, and here's the thing. Maybe there's a race component to this where it's like, well, if you killed off Rhodes, you're killing off one of your like not many black guys. Yeah. At the same time, there's a part of me that goes, my God, that would have added a punch to that final action scene. Like, it would have added a like, oh, it's been all silly and fun, and then holy shit. So like,
who are we
like,
talking?
I think it's the significance of Rhodey, where it's like you would never think that he would die. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, it's just like you just. Or it's like in that episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns like gives him the money to. What are you doing, man? That's Carl. And he's like,
the scene itself is quite devastating. So just imagining that the implication was that he was dead.
Yeah.
Would be amazing. Like you know what I mean? Like, because I remember. Again, I like speaking of like moments. I do remember when he got hit and he was landing. I remember the sound of the audience when he hit the ground, and genuinely people next to us genuinely just like you could hear voices of people being like, oh fuck no, he's gone, there's no way, like sort of like you know you and I was thinking to myself like, now if that was real,
sure,
it would be a stronger experience for it.
Or even
like,
just why him? Why did we're gonna cripple someone? Why we cripple him? Why wouldn't you right after Iron Man having his whole battle within himself about is he Iron Man, I am Iron Man, blah blah blah, I'm one with the suit. Why not paralyze Tony Stark?
Yeah.
And now he needs the Iron Man suit to go all the time.
Absolutely.
He always needs to be, or he
Absolutely.
needs the legs at least, or whatever it is. And like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I don't see where Tony's arc is going. I don't get it.
Me neither, because he's basically become what he didn't like in the first. Like, and it's like.
Whatever.
Hey,
we should bring
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, Doctor Strange. Let's
yeah.
okay.
It's like it always becomes a Marvel conversation, but I mean, credit
It's
to
what
them.
it is.
It's what's fun about this shit now. It's like
talking about the TV show.
Is it fun? Is it fun?
I'm having fun.
Or is it necessary?
I'm having fun. Okay, we're gonna end it on Three-Headed Critic. We revised this game.
Oh right.
It goes. Everybody has one word. And we go until it's a cohesive thought about Doctor Strange.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll start it up.
Sorry.
Tim, Dom, back to me until we come up with something. Okay.
So you're on then. You. I got that. For
More.
visit.
For more, visit
For more, visit.
www.pbs.org. All right, thanks, guys. That's everybody.
I love how you flip that around from 4.
Well, you said for more. He said for.
Let's pat ourselves on the back off mic. All right, guys, thank you so much for chatting with us and listening to us talk about Doctor Strange. You really liked this and want the sound quality to be better, please go to patreon.com/reasonablebeef.
Reasonable beef.
Tim, you have anything to plug? You have any projects that are out or coming?
Yeah, subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/TimH, because I have a new sketch coming out soon, featuring, I guess I can say it, featuring Mr. Olan Rogers.
Hell
I'm very excited about that.
yeah!
Yeah, baby.
We like that guy. Pop Balloon Shop. That's
Pop a balloon shot.
that's what I've known him as for
Papa
years.
balloon shot. Everybody have a
Do you have a tab?
have a strange evening.
You don't have a plug?
I don't know. Watch my shit.
Yeah, I go to my channel.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Or don't. Just do something nice.
Sure.
You know, make yourself feel good.
Go here.
Call your mom.
Here's my Here's my plug. Call your parents. If you don't have parents, just call out to them in anguish.
Yeah. And make sure when you call your parents,
Fucking okay. What?
just ask their permission before visiting.
Going online, yeah.
PBS.
PBS.org. You got a lot of great games on there.
What
Arthur's
a disaster. Arthur's math side
Imagine
scroller.
there's something on there. Okay. Good night, everybody. Woo.
Poo poo poo.